दही बड़ा खाने का मन है। वाह क्या स्वाद!
असली स्वाद तो MDH दही बड़ा रायता मसाले से ही आता है।
Well, this is going to be a great debate because I've got two great speakers. But one of them, if he doesn't go away in the middle of my debate, Mohandas Pai, this is going to be my lucky day because out of the last 5 times he's come on my program, 4 times he's left in anger and disgust. But tonight we'll try to keep him back. So I'll give 30 seconds to both sides tonight. Mohandas Pai, I'll give him the honors of the start. Dr. Santosh Mehrotra, would you give us in 30 seconds? Do you think this bloodbath will last? Do you think the Trump tariff war is going to hit the Indian economy hard? And are we doing enough to stop that? Dr. Mehrotra.
The floor is yours. No, I thought the floor is to him.
No, the floor is to you.
Oh, okay. Is it going to last? It's going to go on certainly for a while because the markets have only just reacted to the first flush of these actions. And we may sort of feel happy about the fact that of all the major economies of the world, especially in Europe, our market has fallen only by 3.8, how much? 4.1% as compared to Hong Kong by 13.6 and Taiwan by 10 and Japan by 10 and so on. All that is fine, but the fact of the matter is that we are nowhere as prepared as you thought, Mr. Goswami, in the wake of China +1. And we might not be in a position to take the kind of advantage that we would want to, merely because Vietnam and China, who are competitors of ours in a whole series of products, have seen higher tariffs. We are not in that position, but be that as it may, I mean, I have a feeling that by and large, the impact of these tariffs is going to be global. The world recession is on its way. American recession is on its way. And our economy is not going to escape that.
So 3 points that you made, Mohandas Pai, I want you to react to them. Point number 1, we are in for a world recession. Everyone's going to go into recession, right? Nobody will be saved. Second point, he says, is that we are in no position to take advantage of the higher tariffs of Vietnam or China, which are at 46% and 54% respectively.
Arnab, my view is we have to hold on to our opinion for quite some time. There's going to be some confusion. There's going to be uncertainty and volatility for the next 30, 40 days, because we have to understand the background of what President Trump is trying to do. The US has a GDP of $32 trillion. They have a debt of $38 trillion. They have a deficit every year of $2 trillion. That means they're borrowing $2 trillion a year. That means in 4 years, it will be $8 trillion. Debt may go up to $44 trillion. And that is becoming unsustainable. And this year, their interest payment is about $1.2 trillion. Next year, it could be $1.5 trillion. Then next year, the interest payment may be higher than Social Security, which is the highest element of cost for them. They're entering into a very unsustainable fiscal position, driven by high deficits and driven by the fact that the whole world comes and dumps into America, which is the largest market for consumption and which has very low tariff. So what is President Trump trying to do? He's trying to cut back the $7 trillion of spending of the government to dodge. I hope he succeeds and cuts $400-500 billion. So spending should come down. Second, he's trying to close the trade gap for $650 billion overall, because on goods he may be having maybe $1 to $1.2 trillion. On services, he has got a surplus. And the biggest source of trade deficit for him is China, about $450-500 billion, Europe, about $350 billion, and then come Mexico and Canada, who are maybe $300 billion totally. And he wants to make sure they buy from the United States and they try to close the trade deficit. And he wants to make sure that whatever the world charges American export, he's going to charge them, because he says, I can't be an open dumping ground. It's all part of a grand strategy to make sure that America bounces back and the economy becomes sounder because becoming unsustainable because the high borrowing.
Yeah, but will we
of the
be
Biden
affected?
Let me come to that. So what he has done now is to levy a 10% tax on all imports from all countries. Then he's increased the tariff for all countries based on a formula, total deficit for that country over the export of that country. And for India, it comes to about 56%. That is 52%. That is 26% is what he has charged because our deficit is only $41 billion for him. Now, this is the opening gambit. And today, the news is very clear. The impact of that has been that the 10-year GSEC rate has fallen to 3.9. I don't know what it is today. And then interest rates may come down. He'll be able to refinance and the cost of borrowing will come down. Petroleum prices have come down. So the cost for the US economy and all consumers is going to come down. And then 55 countries are rung him up and said, we want to negotiate with you. We want to reduce our tariffs. And we want to make sure that we can export you. We don't want to suffer this. They all want to negotiate. And the news that comes out is he may look at pushing it by 50, 60 days and not for China, for the whole rest of the world. I don't know whether the news is correct or not. And he may try to push it forward and negotiate to bring it down. As far as India is concerned, yes, there'll be an immediate impact in India because for the export for the next 30, 40 days may face the tariff. But what India should do quickly is to make a deal with America and a free trade agreement whereby we reduce tariff for American goods to come here and we also get the benefit of lower tariffs to go to America over and above the 10%, which I think is across for all countries. And by doing that, we should be able to export. Now, like Dr. Malhotra said, will we be able to take advantage? We are not very sure because we don't have surplus production. Do you have surplus production to the US like China has? Do you have huge capacity? No. China, Vietnam are the same because the Chinese companies that have gone across the 1,200 kilometers of Vietnam, they send goods across, change the packaging and sell it to the United States. And Vietnam has got a trade surplus of $100 billion with the US. So India will not be able to take advantage in the short term, but the medium to long term, we should be able to take advantage of 15-20% increase in our export. In textiles and garments, we can easily export. Generic medicine, we can export, and we can do many other things. And as far as oil is concerned, we can import more oil from the US. It'll be a substitution and reduce the deficit. So I think we got to wait for the next 15, 20 days to see how the world reacts. The world is in a state of shock because nobody thought President Trump is going to do that. They thought you can negotiate, carry it forward, and dump in the United States. Now he's fighting back. But I think he's got a plan worked out because the Japanese Prime Minister says, I'm willing to fly to the US and negotiate with him. I think many countries will negotiate. Many countries will bring it down. Vietnam is bringing it down. Israel is bringing it down. Japan will bring it down. And India should bring it down and be very smart. We should allow American EV companies, Tesla, to come to India. It will have a big impact on the EV industry, bring us technology, and expand the market manifold. We got to look at it strategically, just like China saw the United States when they entered into the WTO. That is the time when China started growing very fast to export to the US. This is our opportunity. I don't think it's going to reduce the tariff for China in a big way, but China is a major source of its deficit. So I think we got to watch and wait. It's a very interesting gambit, high risk. So I think we got to see who blinks first. And today I read that the Federal Reserve is called a meeting to look at interest rates. Maybe they will cut down the interest rates. And today I saw just now that the Dow has gone back to green territory, NASDAQ is in green territory. And I think it's a very interesting situation.
Well, I think if I look at the sum total of what you just said, I think, Dr. Mehrotra, you would admit that almost everything Mohandas Pai said is right, including the fact that he's not said it in as many words, but Modi is being very smart in negotiating this through. Modi is being very canny, very smart, very nationalist, very nation first, by saying, okay, I'm going to keep talking to you. You may or may not give me a moratorium, but I'll have the first mover advantage. So Modi's been very smart. He holds the first mover advantage. We are the only country seriously engaged in talks with the US for a bilateral trade agreement. And before you know it, I'm sure Mohandas Pai will agree that he's going to sign it and you'll have the news. Maybe we'll get a day's warning that the agreement has been signed. So I think that's coming. I think that's coming, Dr. Mehrotra. This could be a big opportunity for us.
Well, I wish. We need an opportunity. Our growth rate has fallen compared to the preceding 10 years to 5.8%. It used to be 7.8%. Anyway, let's come back to the present because the future is looking very grim, actually. And let me just correct the phrase that both of you have used, that we are in the process of negotiating a free trade agreement with the United States. Actually, we are not negotiating a free trade agreement. We are simply negotiating a trade agreement. That's not the same thing as a free trade agreement. That's what we are negotiating with the Europeans.
We are negotiating for a bilateral trade agreement. But we are negotiating for a good bilateral trade agreement which will help us. And we have the first mover advantage on that.
Yes.
I'm going to come to your first mover advantage, etc. in a minute. I have to tell you, and I've said this over and over again to your studio, I don't hear you well, unfortunately. My signal is excellent, but from your side, the signal is not that great. And unfortunately, I'm not even being able to hear Mohan very well. But anyway, be that as it may, let me move on to the substantive points that were made, and I have something to say. You know, by and large, this is one, unlike what you thought, Arnab, that we are going to go at each other's throats. By and large, there's not that much disagreement between Mohan and me on this for the following reason.
No, I have no problem. You should not be at each other's throats. You should appreciate what Narendra Modi is doing on a minute-to-minute basis.
I'm going to come to that, Baba. If you give me a chance, you didn't keep interrupting Mohan. If you want to keep interrupting me, that's why I don't like coming here slow. Like, you understand, you can smile as much as you want to. The fact of the matter is, I can also simply smile and keep my mouth shut. Okay? So can I speak? If you keep interrupting me, there is no way that I can actually counter either what you are saying or what
I'm not saying a word. I'm not saying a word.
So first of all, we are not signing a free trade agreement. That's a very different kettle of fish. What we are negotiating, we have begun to negotiate, is a trade agreement, and we shall see how that proceeds. Now, on the subject of first mover advantage, I'm sorry, with a man like Trump who is so unpredictable, who will change his mind any day, we have no first mover advantage. I think we gave away too much on the 1st of February itself by reducing tariffs on 37 items. Let me begin by saying that there are many items on which we need to reduce tariffs. I've heard Mohan on this, and he and I are in agreement that we need to reduce tariffs. There's just no question about it. It is this government which had raised tariffs over the last 6 or 7 years, all the way up to over 20%. It had slowly brought them down, but they were still at about 17%, and they needed to be reduced, but very carefully. I could talk about that, but we'll come back to that. The point is, the first mover is not a very clever thing to do with a man like Trump, who's utterly reckless and who can go any length. And every economist you hear in the US will tell you that what he is doing to the US economy is also being done to the world economy, and there is not one sensible economist in either Europe or Japan who is in favor of what he is doing. Now, and it's not even in the interest of the United States.
So we should talk to him. You're saying we shouldn't talk to him.
In the interest of the United States. May I finish, sir? You keep interrupting me. You don't interrupt Mr. Mohandas Pai. I'm sorry. Okay, there were 1,300 cities in which there were protests in the United States. Why? On Saturday. Because people know what the impact of these tariffs are going to be on their pocket. Inflation is going to go up, and that's going to bring a recession. There is 100% chance that there is going to be a US recession. US is 25% of the global economy. That's going to bring a recession across the globe. That's what should worry us much more than the negotiating stance that we are currently taking. You know, in the last analysis,
I don't know.
Our export to GDP are only total export, services as well as merchandise goods, Total exports is 20% of GDP. The US is no more than 4 or 5% of that, of which nearly half consists of services export. And these tariffs are only on the goods. So let's just keep a sense of sanity about this. It won't be impacting our economy hugely. There are sectors which will be impacted. And let me just come to the two sectors which we talked about. And I have a slightly different opinion from what has been articulated so far. Pharma, it is absolutely true that it has been exempted so far. However, yesterday or day before, Trump has already backtracking on pharma. I mean, please understand how his mind works. There is no way that you will predict how his mind works and how his advisors are advising. And on textiles and garments, it is true that our tariffs are lower than our competitors. But so what? Our factories are nowhere as large and they don't have underutilized capacity as even Bangladesh, or let alone Vietnam or China. Please
so
try and understand.
You always look at everything as glass half empty.
We don't have the capacity to up our game quickly in the short run.
Dr. Mehrotra, Dr. Mehrotra, with the utmost of respect for you, your innate ability, and I hope you don't walk out when I say this. I hope you don't walk out, but I'll have to. Your innate and genuine ability to look at a glass half empty is incredible. And I'll have to tell you this. You mentioned exports. But Mohandas Pai will respond to you, not me. Mohandas Pai will respond to you, not me. But sir, did you ever say that Arnab, Indian exports are at record highs? We've seen an all-time high. Would you say the manufacturing capacity of the country is rising rapidly?
You don't know the fact.
Would you say? I know the facts, sir, on this.
No, let me tell you the fact. I'm sorry.
Sir, we have a growing footprint in global trade.
Mr. Goswami, in 2014-15, we were exporting I'm talking about goods because that's what our focus should be, not on services. We were exporting $318 billion in the last year that this government came to power. Every year after that, for 5 years, exports of goods fell. They fell to $265 billion. They have now, in recent 3 or 4 years, climbed back.
So what is the present? No, 1 minute. Sir, the exports are $778 billion now. Would you concede? Or would you not concede? Mohandas Pai, you must step in. Because if I say anything more... अभी बोलेंगे सुनाई दे रहा है पूरा मैं अरे अभी तक कैसे मैंने बोला 778 billion का exports है sir.
You know, Arnab.
Mohandas Pai. On the versus Mohandas Pai. On the rebound.
Mohan, tum bolo.
Arnab, goods export this year is about $460 billion. In the first few years of the new government, exports came down because oil prices came down. We export about $80 billion of oil, import $200 billion of oil. We got a net import of $120 billion. And that keeps going up or down depending upon oil prices. Look, all this is a matter of detail and data. We can study the data over 10 years. The big issue about India has been, we are running a surplus on services of $18 to $20 billion a month. That means we'll have about $240 billion of surplus on services, with software and remittances being the major components. We have a trade deficit in goods of $270 billion. That is $30 billion will be the gap. Next 2 years, I think the services surplus, if things go well and we don't have any great shocks, will be equal to the goods deficit, if at all. And that will be the time when we will remove one weakness in the economy of having a large deficit in trading of goods and services. But Arnab, let us come to the opportunity. We should use this opportunity to export more to the US. We have some capacity in garments. We have some capacity because we're vertically integrated compared to, let's say, Bangladesh, which has got $55 billion of garment export. Because we got from cotton to garments, we have capacity. In fact, when Bangladesh went through a bad patch recently, Indian export of garment increased. And we can increase in the short term, but there's all small details. What is the big issue? The big issue is we must make a deal with the United States. We must focus on exports to the United States. We must give access to the United States into a market. We must make sure in the free trade agreement or trade agreement, we have rules of origin so that Americans don't import Chinese goods and export to us. Our traders don't import Chinese goods and export to America. We don't become a candidate for China. China is a big enemy for global trade because they're hollowing out all economies. They hollowed out Southeast Asia. They hollowed out the United States. They're trying to get into Mexico. And we have to be careful. China is a mercantilist economy, but we have to take advantage of this.
Of course we have to.
Smartness lies not in abusing Trump, not in unnecessarily criticizing, quietly working on the details and opening up the market for India, increasing our trade to $500 billion, both sides, by 2030, and partnering with the US. We missed out partnering with the US for so many years. This is a great time to do it. Our industry is in good shape, very productive, cost effective, and we can certainly grow capacity and export.
I think that's a very, very rational estimate. Our audience poll is divided. 55% say we won't be impacted, 45% say we will. And this is the first ever debate on which Dr. Mehrotra has not walked out. Full credit to Mohandas Pai for that, not to me. I thank you very much. We'll have you both back. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for that great debate on the market bloodbath.
लाल रंग इसका अपार, तीखा कम है फिर भी स्वाद, बेमिसाल बेमिसाल MDH कश्मीरी।
MDH कश्मीरी